What happened to our evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals? How did humans and Neanderthals live side by side for thousands of years, only for one to flourish, while the other vanished? Although they are not the same species as modern humans, Neanderthals are considered ancient human relatives called Homo neanderthalensis, and share a common ancestor with Homo sapiens. Around 600,000 years ago, the evolutionary paths of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens began to diverge from a common ancestor. Neanderthals would go on to inhabit the colder climates of Europe and Western Asia, while Homo sapiens evolved in Africa and adapted to warmer environments. For hundreds of thousands of years, the two species lived entirely separate lives, shaped by their own environments, until their paths inevitably crossed. When they did, it was not a single encounter, but a series of migrations, overlaps, and meetings that would leave a permanent mark on our genetic makeup. Neanderthals were physically powerful, with broad shoulders, stocky frames, and strong limbs suited to the brutal cold of Ice Age Europe. They were skilled hunters, masters of stone tools, and capable of creating shelters using hides and wood. They buried their dead, crafted ornaments, and likely used language in some form. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, brought a different kind of advantage. They had more complex social structures, symbolic thinking, and advanced tools and weapons. When the two species met, these differences did not lead to immediate conflict. In many regions, they lived side by side, sharing hunting grounds, resources, and sometimes even shelter. Evidence from ancient DNA reveals that these meetings were not purely practical arrangements. The two species interbred. It did not happen on a massive scale, but often enough that every person alive today, whose ancestry comes from outside of Africa, carries traces of Neanderthal DNA. On average, about 1 to 2%. This genetic legacy is not the same for everyone, as different groups carry different Neanderthal genes, inherited from separate encounters across thousands of years. These genes are more than just a curiosity. They may influence our skin, hair, immune system, and even certain risks for disease. The interbreeding likely happened in waves, each time Homo sapiens left Africa and pushed into Neanderthal territory. The relationships between the groups would have been complex. Some encounters may have been cooperative, with the exchange of skills, tools, and knowledge. Others may have been marked by competition for resources, especially as climates shifted and hunting became more difficult. Still, the genetic evidence makes it clear that the boundaries between the two species were not as rigid as once thought. Yet, for all their resilience, the Neanderthals eventually disappeared around 40,000 years ago. The reasons are still debated, and it is unlikely that there was a single cause. Climate change would have played a significant role. The cold, fluctuating conditions of Ice Age Europe became harsher, and the large game Neanderthals relied on became scarcer. Smaller, more adaptable prey required different hunting strategies, ones in which Homo sapiens, with their lighter builds and more efficient tools, may have had the advantage. Competition for resources could have slowly pushed Neanderthal groups into smaller and more isolated pockets, making it harder for them to survive. Diseases brought by Homo sapiens, to which Neanderthals had no immunity, might also have spread through their populations. Interbreeding, while leaving a genetic legacy, may have also contributed indirectly to their disappearance, as small groups merged with larger Homo sapien populations over time, until the distinct Neanderthal identity faded away. The last Neanderthal communities likely survived in scattered refuges, hanging on for centuries before finally vanishing. But they did not disappear entirely. Their DNA lives on, in us. The genetic fragments they left behind were carried forward through countless generations, a living record of those ancient encounters. Traits inherited from Neanderthals may have helped early Homo sapiens adapt to the colder climates of Eurasia. It likely strengthened immune responses to local diseases or even altered skin pigmentation to better handle the lack of sunlight during certain parts of the year. Today, every time you look in the mirror, you are seeing the result of that shared history. The slope of a nose, the density of hair, even subtle aspects of metabolism may have their roots in Neanderthal ancestry. Far from being a distant and now extinct cousin, they are part of who we are. Their story isn't simply one of disappearance and extinction, but the merging of two human species who met thousands of years before, shaping one another and leaving a legacy, written not in bones, but in the very code of our DNA. This is the rise of humans,